Thank you all for being here as well. As much as we are colleagues, it's a privilege for me to be in conversation with Brian because every conversation with somebody who's seen global publishing industry over the last 30 years is going to be a learning curve. And we'll hope we are able to bring a lot of insights for the audience here as well. I do have to add that designations notwithstanding, over the last 25 years, Brian has overseen the transformation of HarperCollins through acquisitions, organic growth, investing in digital transformation. And we are now a company that publishes in over 20 countries, in over 16 languages, and have 1 billion readers, give or take, annually. One of our major thrusts is to ensure that as many children, as many readers join the reading bandwagon. Most recently, we've announced a Reading for Pleasure campaign in the UK. But every time we have a conversation, the only thing that we always talk about is, are we publishing the right books? And are we taking our books and our authors to as many readers as possible? Brian, thank you. You've been to India here many times. Thank you for coming to India again. Welcome on behalf of JLF and JBM. Thank you for being here. You've been in a couple of cities. So first impressions of India and Jaipur?
It's very exciting. It's been a little over 10 years since I've been to India. And so the change is remarkable. It's just so exciting to see the development in infrastructure in general, but also to see the changes in the book publishing industry here too. Very exciting developments. And I'm going to make sure that it's not 10 years before I'm here the next time.
Yes, exactly. I was going to say that there's a lot more food to eat and relish as well.
I am working my way through the food, that's for sure.
Thank you. Brian, over the last 10 years, I mean, we've had almost seismic changes, one could say. The publishing industry has gone from print to the advent of audio, and then retail went from indies to chains, the rise and fall, and then what online and Amazon and now digital buying of things have changed. So the session is called Scanning the Horizon. So if you give the audience, big route markers in the last 10 years that have helped the industry become who we are.
Sure. The one thing about publishing that is constant is change. We are fortunate in that we operate in that intersection between culture and technology and commerce. Books have been around for hundreds of years. Storytelling is innate to human beings. And we are that business that excels in helping creators, writers, authors, illustrators get their messages across in long form. And so it's just natural of being part of a human being to want to tell stories. So over these last 10 years or so, we have seen significant changes. And when I think about the role a publisher plays, everything we do begins with an author or an illustrator with their manuscript, the raw material that out of their creative minds. And we do all the work, the editing, the marketing, the sales, the distribution to get it into a reader's hands. So that's sort of the value chain of book publishers. When you think about what happens with the writer, with the creator over the last 10 or the last decade, many decades, maybe forever, their role has not changed very much because of technology. Yes, there's word processing instead of long form handwriting. But that part of what they do hasn't changed very much. That part of what our editors do has not changed very much. However, the closer you get to the reader, the more incredible change that there has been. Yeah. And everything that a book publisher does, from the production of the book, the printing, the manufacturing of the book, much better, faster technology, just-in-time printing. And then, of course, we have new formats like ebooks that you mentioned. We now have audiobooks and digital audio. So there are more formats that the publishing company creates. So that's a whole new set of work streams that we provide as a service to those publishers. And then when it comes to the marketing and the distribution, that has changed tremendously as well. If you go back 10 years or more, the gatekeepers and the influencers were often buyers at chains and maybe newspaper reviewers that held a lot of weight in which books were selected to be promoted and reviewed in newspapers or magazines, for example. Well, today that has changed so much. There are far fewer newspapers that review books to begin with, far fewer. But now the social media influencer has sort of supplanted them. and is now who we try to develop relationships with. We still retain all of the old because it does work. It's just that it is less impactful. So we do everything we can with reviewers, with buyers, with librarians. But there's this whole new avenue of social media influencers. There's these new digital platforms, which are mostly global, that we try to interact with. So the marketing and the distribution, again, as we get closer to the reader, has had tremendous change. There's always something new. Every year, we're going to be surprised by something new that surprises us.
TikTok just came by and something that we hadn't seen at all, and then it became Book Talk, and then completely changed the dynamic, as it were.
That's right. So TikTok today is now, by some measures, $1 billion book marketing platform. The fact that it has an impact on over $1 billion worth of book sales. I mean, that came from nowhere 3 years ago. And that community, that subset community on TikTok, which are called the Book Talkers or Bookstagrammers on Instagram and other places, really are breaking books. I mean, there are Instagrammers and booktubers and all of these different people that are falling in love with books. Their streams go viral, more people find out about it, and that is more often than not now what is driving some of the most commercial books on the market.
Biggest hits in the market. English language publishing over the last, let's say, 200 years of HarperCollins. Just a quick reminder, as HarperCollins originated as a family-run print shop in 1817, and now it's a global conglomerate that publishes across 30 imprints all over the world, 120 imprints all over the world. English publishing, one could argue, was pretty straightforward, at least from an Indian, where we sell 70% of imported books. It started with the classics and Shakespeare, and now all the way to the most recent English book. You've overseen taking English books into foreign markets, especially foreign language markets. And India, one we often argue here, is as much a European market as any other because we publish in 15 languages. What are the learnings from entering, also for publishers in the room, who, and they're all in the hope that Indian authors will dominate global literary scenes, as it were, as translations become more and more important. The festival, this platform is sponsored by Norway, and their authors come here as well. Our learnings on European markets as emerging foreign markets for English language authors.
Yeah, so we've been working hard to position HarperCollins as a global publishing platform, a set of global professionals in multiple languages and cultures that can provide services to authors, no matter where they write, no matter which audiences they're trying to read. So HarperCollins has made the most strides. As you mentioned, we publish in over 16 different languages, and we're in over 20 countries. Our nearest competitor isn't publishing in that many countries. So, and we're doing this because we see what's happening to distribution. So companies like Amazon have made major strides in countries all around the world in dominating book retail and retail in general. And then we see some of our distributors like Spotify and Audible in the audiobook business are also opening up in many markets around the world, in markets that are not English, foreign language languages in those markets. And now we see, TikTok and Instagram, global marketing channels for ourselves. So our hope and what we're trying to build here is a publishing company that can provide consistent services, best practices to authors in as many countries as possible. And when you look forward with AI, you see some of the skills, some of the capabilities that these AI models have. I predict there's going to be an explosion of bilateral translations from any language pair, whether it's English into French or French to English. Those pairs, I think we will see an explosion. There will be more English written books that will be available in the French language, but also the reverse. There will be many French books that are currently not translated and available in the English language markets. That will happen as well. So I think we're about to see an explosion of content available that cuts across territories, across languages, unlike we've ever seen before. It's a very small percentage of books that are translated and travel from one country to another.
Correct.
And so now we have this opportunity to at least make the books professionally edited, available in print and ebook and in audio as well, for a much lower cost. And then hopefully, if we do a good job marketing, we're going to have amazing surprises. We will have, I am sure, we will have Indian authors' novels that, without the advent of some of the new tools that are coming on the horizon, where we're able to translate and to create audiobooks and ebooks and make them available in the US and other markets.
Almost simultaneously.
They wouldn't otherwise be able to be discovered. So solving discovery is going to be the next big effort, I think, of publishers. And that means making books available in as many languages and as many formats as possible and at the right price points, so that they have an opportunity to be discovered and purchased and shared.
Perfect. We call it the triple A of the publishing industry: Amazon, audio, and AI. They're literally the kind of triple A battery that's kind of driving change, especially in the last. Earlier, it used to be like we said: you walk into a bookstore with a bag of books, sell it to the buyer, he puts it on display, a newspaper reviews it. But now we are entirely determined by these tech innovations, as it were. So I'm going to start with Amazon. Great global retailer of everything, but an even greater bookseller. I think through pandemic and otherwise, and we've spoken about it, they've driven the change to make sure that everybody can buy a book at the comfort of the home, whether it's an e-book or a print book delivered in 24/7. What are our advantages and disadvantages, if I may use the word, of having this mega bookseller determining the success of publishing?
It's so hard to believe. I think you started in 1997 in book publishing. I started in 1997 in book publishing. Amazon was founded in 1997 in book publishing.
Wow.
All right. So we didn't join the right companies.
Exactly. I wish I'd known then.
Same with me. But actually, I don't. Knowing where they went, I'm very happy to be part of HarperCollins and part of the publishing industry.
Sure,
but when you think about the fact that one of the world's most innovative and now most valuable and most global of companies got its start in the book publishing business, it's quite shocking. But Amazon, you have to give them a tremendous amount of credit for the innovation that they brought. Jeff Bezos understood the impact that the internet would have on retail, and he set about building a business, and not just building a value proposition to the consumers, which was very low prices, very quick delivery to your door, but also to his investors, who saw no profits for about 15 years, zero profits, $1 billion in losses. He was able to convince them to stay on that journey with him across more than a decade, and they did. And those investments, paid off tremendously, I think. It also, obviously, competition requires everybody to raise their game, whether it's a supplier like HarperCollins to Amazon, or to other retailers in all the markets around the world where you have to compete with Amazon. And I think, in that sense, Amazon has been a force for good, and innovation is very important. We all can't stand still. We always have to be moving forward. That's the good.
And
now for the challenging part is they've been so successful. They are, some might say that they can be a bully. Some might say they're demanding too much. Some might say that that they are forcing their competitors out of the market by making them go bankrupt. Those are all very common arguments that you hear about the problem of Amazon. And I think there's truth to all of those to some degree or another. The regulatory situation varies in every country, but, a company that is super successful that will draw the focus of regulators. Yes. And they have. Yeah. So
protect the consumers to
begin. That's right. And one of the challenges these regulators have is that Amazon has scarfed up a lot of the business that used to take place with independent retailers, but they've also lowered the price to the consumer. And I think regulators have a hard time differentiating, at some point, if you allow Amazon to just keep going and there's only one retailer left, that's a big loss.
They can
for
determine the
consumers,
price
right?
then. Yes.
And so it's in publishers' interest to make sure that we have a physical and digital ecosystem where there's as much possible choice for consumers as possible. And so we work very hard to try to maintain some kind of balance so that we can have a thriving independent book retail market. We can have thriving national chains because they're very important for spaces. Yes. and promotional vehicles in national chains to help break authors out. And we would like to see, competitive online retail, competitive digital audio, competitive ebook providers as well, just so that consumers can have choice in where they choose to buy their books.
And that part of battling the challenge is what is also continuing to create consolidation conversations in the publishing industry.
Yes. So, HarperCollins was well positioned as a large English language publisher. We were well positioned to kind of move towards this model of trying to publish across many languages. And we're well ahead on that journey. That's not to say that there aren't going to be and will be in the future successful publishers just within country and medium-sized publishers. I think we will always have that. But what I'm hopeful that we're going to be able to do with HarperCollins is to build that geographic scale to try to provide some balance, for example, in negotiations with some of these big global tech companies, because we do operate in so many countries. So I don't know if we'll be successful, but that is the direction that we're going. And in going in that direction, I know that we're building professional services that are top notch for authors in every place that we operate.
Perfect. Switching to audio, as it were. I mean, a child wakes up and a child is born, and I think between the parents, they want to know which is going to say ma or pa, as it were. So audio has always been, especially in a country like ours, oral storytelling tradition is at the heart of how we learn phonetics. And again, I can speak Bengali, but I can't write it simply because I've heard it. It feels a bit odd that audio came very late to the publishing party, but audio now is determining a lot of success in the way and then audio married to AI. Why this sudden boom in audio, and what's going to happen next?
Well, a lot of things happened, and they happened slowly at first, and then they happened quickly. So HarperCollins has been publishing audiobooks for about 60 years, but they were very expensive.
60
years. Yeah, we go way back into the 50s and 60s. We have recorded audiobooks, but they were created on LPs. They were large LPs to begin with, and then we moved to every audio format you could imagine. But it was always a super niche business. A lot of times the sales were to libraries. A lot of times sales were people who had visual impairments. They could listen. So, but they were super expensive to produce. Tens and tens of thousands of dollars to have a voice artist to go into a recording studio. You had to book the recording studio time at several $1,000s an hour. And then it could take 10 to 20 hours to actually record an entire full-length novel. So they were very expensive upfront fixed costs. And then the distribution, it was not a commercial distribution path. It was a niche distribution path. So anyway, that's the history. But what we've witnessed now, particularly with the advent of music, we all have phones now, but even if you go back to the Sony Walkman, we started doing cassettes. But you had to have 10 or 20 cassettes to put into the Walkman. I mean, for one book. And no one's carrying around the big case of cassettes with them.
Just the book,
I mean,
yes.
So we continued in the business, and again, publishing a small number at that time, just the top sellers. But then when Apple really broke through and had, first their iPod and then the iPhone, everybody started streaming music, and it became innate how to stream audio, music or narration from your phone. And so Audible had been long in the audiobook business. They had developed their own hardware decades ago. And so they were best positioned with a digital audio catalog to be a first mover. And they were then able to jump on the iPhone, the introduction of the iPhone, and eventually the Android phones all around the world. So they were the early mover. Amazon, of course, bought Audible
Yep.
If you can't make it, buy it. So they bought it. But then more recently, Spotify, who had 300 million paying music subscribers, first went into podcasts, which is audio, and
It's
then
very
went
big,
into
yeah.
audiobooks. And it's been a very successful launch, both for publishers and for Spotify, in terms of their entry into the audiobook business. So now we have truly global, commercially advantageous pricing in terms to have our audiobook catalog reach listeners all around the world. And the thing that is very appealing to me about the audiobook listener is I think it's largely an incremental sale, incremental consumption, because a lot of times audiobook listening happens maybe while you're driving or you're working or you're running. It's at times when you can't actually look at a print book or look at an ebook. Your eyes are busy doing something else. And so we've sort of gained time. If you think about the amount of disposable time in 24 hours that's available for book consumption, it expanded it because you didn't have to hold an
You could do
e-reader,
other things
or you
while
could do
still
other
listening.
things while listening to your favorite novel or your favorite history book. So the audiobook play was a very positive, accretive, and incremental format for book publishers. And we're still working on the pricing and the consumer offers, whether it's a subscription or whether it's a la carte, or that is still being worked on. But I have no doubt what we've seen in 5 English language markets and developments that are happening in some of the European markets, that it will happen here in India.
That's what we're doing as well.
So anyway, and also I'll say that audiobook listener tends to be a little bit younger than the book reader than the ebook or print reader. So it's a good sign.
And also first-time readers have entered, especially in a country of so many reluctant readers, listening in and coming. We are hoping that the younger generation switches to books through the audio.
And if they're already listening to music now, some of the creative things that we've seen Spotify do is, if you liked this author, here's her autobiography. If you like this music artist, here's their autobiography, and they will drive you over there. And you might not have known, because you might not be a reluctant reader. You might not visit bookstores. You might not visit Amazon looking for the latest books. And here they do is they make the connection to the music fan and let them know that there's an autobiography available.
Correct. And especially in podcasts, people have switched from the personality in the podcast to what they've written without having to think about it as a book buying or a book listening experience. I think no conversation can be had without saying the words AI. So the benefits of AI and how it can change, and then what we should watch out for as publishers when dealing with AI, and what it means for copyright for publishers.
Sure. AI is a very big topic. A day doesn't go by I'm not thinking about it. I'm not learning something new. I think we're all on an incredibly steep learning curve about the impact of AI. But it's also incredibly exciting. It's a very powerful technology. You can imagine all kinds of ways it can help publishers. It can help authors. We can do more for them using AI tools, which we've started to do. But there's also all these worries about, number one, these models were built on stolen book content. That is a big fight that we're having. All the creative industries are having a big fight. There's over 30 lawsuits just in the US around the stealing of content to build these large language models. But the real worry for many creators and publishers is the idea of generative AI, where could there be books that are generated through these models that substitute for human creativity and human work? And that's a very, very big concern. And I have to just say, even just this week, the irony of reading in the headlines that OpenAI is very upset that the Chinese stole their AI machine and built a model that is just as good as the OpenAI model for only $6 million US. I have to say, I love that article. I read it 3 times. I was like, how good does it feel to read this article?
Yes.
And Sam Altman is often quoted saying things like, "Oh, we're spending $300 billion to build these models. We can't let this new term I'd never heard until 2 days ago, distillation, be used to extract all of the hard work, the hundreds of billions of dollars we put into our large language models." And I'm thinking, okay, HarperCollins, just this past year, we invested $500 million into authors creating books. So if you look at the last 10 years, we're talking about $5 billion HarperCollins has invested in authors, and he stole it all, and so
exactly.
I'm like,
in the name of digitization.
I invested more than you did. So anyway, the irony in some of this stuff is rich, to say the least. And so, but this is all happening so quickly. Technology only seems to go faster, and the law and courts can't keep up. And so that presents a lot of issues for creators and for creative businesses. We are very supportive at HarperCollins of a lot of these lawsuits. Our business is founded on copyright law. Copyright law only applies to human created works, does not apply to machine created works. And so that means, these AI machines, first of all, they stole copyright content to build the models. And now they potentially, with the generative AI, can substitute. That is a clear copyright. All of this is a copyright infraction. It's illegal. But it's just one of these things where we need to make sure that we are protecting copyright in all the countries where we operate. We have to push back against some of the big tech companies that make these arguments that, copyright it's too intrusive. It's too hard to go get a consent and to pay authors for their
I always
work.
worry when people use the word democratize.
Yes, right. I know. So there are certain words that tech companies have gotten good at weaponizing to decrease regulation, to justify the stealing of content, basically other people's works, to build their new tools and claim that they're transformative and it's all for the good of humanity. Yeah. So we're pushing back very hard, and it requires coordination across many countries to make sure that the creator's viewpoint is shared. And so that's a world, that generative AI world is a world that we are very focused on and taking steps in parallel, both trying to limit their use. We're also trying to negotiate with some of these big AI companies in order to get concessions around the protection of our IP. So we have these two paths right now. One is to try to negotiate, see if we can get commercial agreement. And then there's also the courts, but we know the courts are going to take a very, very long time. So we're at this very early stage of a new technology. It seems to be moving incredibly fast. It's exciting, but sometimes
like
exciting means scary.
Yeah, writing the rules for it is what it's going to be because it's changing as fast as we say fast.
Correct. So the U.S. Copyright Office just yesterday came out with their first report or recommendation on trying to determine what can be copyrighted if AI is used. So if a human creates it, there's no question. If a machine is 100% the creator, there's no question it cannot be copyrighted. But what is that gray area? What if it's 50-50? What if it's 80-20? There are no court cases around that today. And so the U.S. Copyright Office has come out with a policy position that says there is not going to be a magic percentage, that these things, this hybrid area, will have to be determined on a case-by-case basis. Because I think that, again, the technology is so new, I am not sure how you can definitively say that output from generative AI is this percent this copyrighted work and this percent original or this percent from the human who put the prompt in. So anyway,
it's all still human in some way.
Exactly. So so basically what that tells me, that policy position means that we will be operating in this gray space for quite some time. And now at HarperCollins, we're going to have to think about what does that mean for the works that we acquire and for the authors. What advice are we going to give to authors about how to document and prove that the work is truly their own and it's copyrightable? So we have more work to do on that. But again, it's just an example. That was the Copyright Office yesterday. I think that the day before was this new term distillation.
Yeah,
The
something
day
like that.
before was deep sea. I mean, it's just going so quickly.
Even scarier is I think most of the AI coders are living and working out of India. So you can you can imagine
Well,
how we
maybe
think by now.
Maybe we need to put a couple plants in
Exactly,
there to
so-
find out what's really going on.
I'm going to ask you to play somewhere between Moses and a monk, and you're in India. We have a rich cultural diversity. It's a country of many thousand publishers who want to be ambitious, but we want to take Indian publishers and authors want their books to go abroad, and you've published in almost every continent. So if the things that Indian publishers should think about to take their books to the rest of the world, as Indians are the single largest foreign population at this point of time, many 100 million. What would your advice be to Indian publishers? How to think about going global?
So there are probably several paths to consider. So one is the traditional path. If you have success in India, you have a following in India. There are certainly literary agents who are here, I know, scouting out the next big bestsellers that have opportunity to channel. I'll just say that's the traditional model. That applies to a very small percentage where the literary community, either from the US or the UK, may identify and may be able to get something. But that's the traditional model. What we're seeing now, though, is that there are more and more self-publishing paths to try to get your work discovered. And so the self-publishing path is becoming more and more accepted by traditional publishers in all territories, in all markets. In fact, I say about once a week in the US, I'm approving a very big deal for an author that has been self-published and now has, 100,000 book sales on their own, only through self-publishing platforms like Amazon or others. And then they have a social media following, and we are buying them directly, not through the traditional proposal. And then they try to build because they can withdraw, they can put the book back up again, so you can kind of edit live in that way. So I'm just saying that is another path right now because it's much more accepted today than it was even 2 years ago. And so I guess what I would say is the most important thing is if you go down that self-publishing path is to make sure you do it with a self-published company where you're able to withdraw all the rights. So if you do hit the lottery and you get tens of thousands of followings, if you're an Indian author and you're trying to self-publish into the US or into the UK, you want to make sure if you begin to get momentum that you always have the right to pull those rights back 100% to yourself so that you can then sell them to a global publisher to make them available everywhere. Recently, we've seen Amazon try to keep that from happening.
Oh, wow.
So you just have to be very clear, depending on which company you go with. They often have different terms about what's involved with withdrawing your book. So that's the most important thing because, you can trial, you can experiment, you can try to find a readership outside of India. You can do social media marketing, because it's not very expensive. And you can try to find there and see
a
if you get
viral
traction.
reel
Right.
can just make your book.
And where it used to be, maybe there used to be a stigma from publishers in the US or the UK, like, oh, well, that's self-published, I wouldn't touch it. It's the exact opposite right now. We're like, oh, that's really working. We'd love to work with you. So that would be my advice for trying to help ambitious writers try to find audiences beyond the
Around the world.
subcontinent. Yeah.
Thank you. You've been a very good, easy conversationalist because you have long answers and very useful and insightful answers. We have 9.5 minutes. I do have to open the floor for questions. Please just, put up your hand. Do introduce yourself. Let's comment more question, please. Ajay, I'll come to you 1 minute. I have a question right in the front, please.
Can I, in the context of Spotify, TikTok, social media, what do you think about serialization? 70s, 80s, we used to look forward to tomorrow's newspaper and there was a book being serialized. Are you surprised that it hasn't come back? And what about incremental payment linked to serialization? What do you think of the prospect? And the second quick question, Ananth, to you. A friend who couldn't be here asked me to ask you, is at a stage where Ernst Hemingway said, first draft of everything is shit. He asked me to ask you if you could help him.
Okay, yeah, no, we definitely can. I think I had the privilege of working with the best editors in the industry, but Brian will answer your first question.
So the serialization, I mean, you're right. We've often thought, how come it hasn't come back in US, UK? We have seen explosive growth in serialization in Asia. So China in particular, there's a whole category of what they call internet fiction, which starts on your mobile phone and you subscribe, you pay, very little money. And if you get hooked, you just every day, you go back for more, you go back for more, you go back for more. And then at the end, this basically serialized fiction gets bound up. And then you can find it in the state-owned Chinese bookstores. And it's a very successful category. That has worked well in Asia, some Asian countries. We haven't found a willing partner in the US in the English language that wants to go down that path. And we found, while often we want to try something innovative, say, for example, we wanted for years to bundle the digital audiobook and the ebook, or bundle the ebook with the print book. Our large retail partners didn't want to do that. They were like, I don't really know. I kind of like it the way it is. And I always suspected that they were, for their best customers, they were buying both at full price. And so they didn't want to do the bundle. That's just my guess, because it seems so logical to me to have an upsell in a bundle across formats. But we can't get traction from these big companies to do it. And without their help, we just can't move the needle. You really need a partner who has a direct-to-consumer relationship at scale to make something like that successful. So it might happen again, but I haven't seen it. I haven't seen any budding momentum recently in the US.
Yeah, a quick input. It's happening in Indian language publishing in India. Digital companies where audio stories are being told serialized, the withdrawal and changing of characters, people come back alive, which they died last week. They have differential pricing as well. But Indian language publishing on the digital, what we call storytelling has come a really long way. And the hope is they become in print as well. But there's a lot happening in Indian language publishing. Thank you for that question, sir. Ajay? Yes, he put his arm up.
Hi, my name is Ajay Jain, and I run an independent bookstore called Kunzum, and my pet peeve is Amazon, right? And you spoke about, striking a balance so that indies, the national chains, and Amazon, they all get a fair share of the pie. But I don't think it's a level playing field. And there are experiences like France, and I got to know about Norway yesterday, where there are controls on discounting and the price at which you can sell books. So how's the experience in countries like France and Norway, right? How's that affected sales of books, the development of all channels of distribution, as well as then eventually affecting the culture of reading, right? So just want to understand, and what are the steps that you are taking specifically that when you said that, okay, we're trying to create strike a balance, what specifically are you doing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I might have used a stronger word than pet peeves, but I appreciate the PG commentary there. So different countries have different laws, right? So France has a fixed book price. Germany also has fixed book price. So each country sets up their own laws around what you can or can't do about price. In the US, it is a free-for-all. You're allowed to sell below cost. We as publishers cannot dictate a minimum price. We've had lawsuits with the government twice in my 30 years almost, and they've always been over price and over trying to ensure, what we would like to do, a level playing field where, the big guys are getting the same deal as the independents. It's been very hard. It's very fraught. And again, country by country, the publishers have to make a decision. In terms of the things that we do to support that, we do a lot, and I can speak to the US here. We do a lot with events because there's really no such thing as an Amazon online event. And our authors, who are our American authors who are in the U.S., they are incredibly supportive of the independent bookstores, and they will go and they'll do their readings and their signings there. Also, when they do their social media, they will always be, we suggest, and a lot of times our authors will do it, they're always pointing to, there's an indiebookshop.org website. So they will point there, which is a selection of independents, rather than just going to Amazon. So we try to make sure that our marketing efforts are broad. And then we have, certain, we have certain programs, different times of the year for our independent booksellers to try to give them a little bit of a help, a little bit of a competitive edge, particularly around the holidays and that, November, December timeframe where there's a lot of book buying that goes on. We put in extra special terms to encourage them to they get longer to pay us, or they have an opportunity to get special terms on some of the books. So, but it varies country by country because the laws vary country by country. But we know the future that we want is we have to have a vibrant independent bookstore channel. It's absolutely critical. All those diverse buying decisions that those stores make and the hand selling that they do to their local communities is absolutely critical. And then we also know we need to have national chains because they provide something a little bit different. They provide some national promotional vehicles at the front of store, for example, that can be very helpful in breaking out new young talent. And then the commerce side, they are good at that instant purchase. And in the US, at least, it's very surprising. You'd be surprised about how many postcodes there are with no bookstore. And so Amazon does play a big role for those people who don't live within a 10-kilometer radius of a bookshop, because the points of distribution of books has really receded in the US. So there's a real benefit that they provide to those customers. But anyway, there's lots of little things that we do. And then we're also very involved in the government and lobbying. We are regulars lobbying for a level playing field. I can't say we've been super successful, but we are there more than annually arguing the case. And we have a lot of people who've been very receptive to us to make sure that we can have a vibrant book ecosystem.
Great. I'm sure there are a lot of questions, but we have just enough time to say, if you have more questions, you can send it to write to us at harpercollins.co.in, and we will find time with Brian, and he will respond himself, I'm sure, as before. So do write to us at harpercollins.co.in. Take a pledge. Please buy a book at the Festival Bookstore, even if not for yourself, for a child in the family. Brian Murray, thank you very, very much. It's been very useful.
Thank you,
Thanks a
Ananth.
lot.